Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Business Spotlight. I'm your host, Todd Rodden. I'm a certified business and executive coach based here in the Dayton, Ohio area. And today we are thrilled to have Scott McGohan join us. Scott is a well respected leader in the Dayton, Cincinnati area and beyond. 35 plus years of executive level leadership with McGohan Brabender, but now is taking a unique transition and starting his own new business. He's going to talk through with One Morning. So, again, for those folks who are new to the spotlight, we're thrilled to have you here. Encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you can receive future messages as well. So, Scott McGohan, thrilled to have you. Also, a recently published author with his book, Culture is an Inside Job, which he'll talk about as well. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background and especially about kind of this new venture you have, One Morning, where you were working on, bringing more awareness around mental health in the workplace.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I think, a couple things. Now you get me started. It might be hard for you to shut me up. So you might just have to jump.
We've been warned.
But there you go. Married 35 years to my best friend. Her name's Lori. I've got two children, 35 years old, Courtney, married to a guy named Jack, two grandkids. We should have had them first on this planet. This planet would be a very nice place to live. I've got a son. His name's Taylor. He's married to a girl named Megan. They're going to expect their first child, and then blessed to work inside of the walls of McGohan Brabender for 35 years. Coming out of MB, I'm 59, and I thought me doing nothing probably doesn't end well for my wife, for humanity, for me, or really anything. And then what are some things I deeply care about? I care about organizational culture, which is hence, kind of why I wrote the book, Culture is an Inside Job. Deep down, this book is really around the gift of self-awareness and the gift of digging deep inside your soul and maybe meeting that inner child inside of you when you were most happiest with yourself. And it's really, to help organizations understand that culture is not about ping pong tables and ball chairs, right? It's about an authentic leadership. It's about not wearing a mask inside of your organization. And then it's about loving people. But probably what I care about most is where I can be most useful, to people. And when I was 43, I think, and the perception was I had everything in my life. So I had, homes and cars and a career, but I didn't want to live anymore. So I asked God to take away the pain, or I was going to do it myself. And that was a very dark, lonely day 16 years ago. And so I walked into the recovery rooms in Dayton and said, "My name's Scott and my soul is cooked," because I didn't know what was wrong. But what I discovered is I had a really warped sense of self-worth. I thought self-worth equaled performance plus the opinions of other people. So in other words, your opinion of me meant more than my own opinion of myself. And it almost took my life. So in the last 16 years, I've spent the majority of my time, leading recovery groups, driving emotional intelligence work, inside of the walls of MB and bringing life to mental health. So that was a long answer to a short question.
Very meaningful, heartfelt answer as well. And I've known Scott a little bit for the last few years and always respected his transparency. I know that his openness and vulnerability attracts people to him, right? And he's helping to share, and people are learning from him and gaining from that as well. So kind of build upon that. So now you've got One Morning focus kind of around this topic. Can you explain, hey, what's going on there? What services you're providing? Kind of how you go in the market?
Yeah. So what I loved being, as a CEO, you're on the top of the hill, right? And then I forgot what it was like to be at the bottom of the hill. So now as a new founder, I'm on the top of the hill and I'm the bottom of the hill. So I get to say things like, "Hey, we need a contract." And then be like, "Hey, yeah, Scott, you need a contract." Hey, Scott, like, hey, you need a contract.
Hey, Scott, good luck with that.
100%. So I didn't have like, I'm not sure. I shouldn't say I didn't appreciate the resources I had, because I certainly did, but I'm not really sure I understood all of the unpacking of all the details of starting an organization. So the very first step of that was, hey, how do we beta this? So is this transferable? Can we build a product that's attractive? Is it going to be useful? So we're right in the middle of two betas. So one beta we're doing is with Dayton Phoenix Group here in Dayton. Great organization. And we're doing a beta with their workforce around, hey, through storytelling, how do we engage them to use their EAP at a much higher capacity than they're using it today? And then for your listeners, an EAP is an employee assistance program, which 75% of employers have them. Only 4% of the people use them. What we're trying to do is just bring that to life inside of organizations through compelling storytelling.
So what's next beyond, you're kind of in beta mode. What do you see as the vision down the road?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we really wanted to try to do was bring life to really, I mean, as an employer, and a lot of employers get this, but some don't act like it, but everybody comes in your organization with all of life's problems in their pockets. And employers that believe that employees don't bring that stuff to work are inept, and sadly mistaken. Because at the end of the day, as an employer, the work will get done. You don't have to worry about the work getting done. As an employer, you have to worry about how that work's going to get done. And when people are dealing with things like miscarriage, financial fear, taking care of elderly parents, kids getting bullied at school, depression, anxiety, marital issues, substance abuse, addiction. Now we're right in the middle of elections. So you have this whole political divide, avoiding conflict, people pleasing, codependency. Like I just mentioned all those things, and you can get a room of 10 and you can ask people, does any of those hit home personally or within your family? And if every person doesn't raise their hand, they're lying. Because
sure.
everybody's going through something. And what we really want to do is like let people know through storytelling that that's okay, that it's okay not to be okay, and say something, because saying nothing can be hurtful and harmful. So just say something. And so that's what we're really kind of excited about and then we do that all through storytelling and video. So for employers, they have something they're paying for that nobody uses. That's a burden. That's a waste of money. It's a waste of capital. So can I stand in front of that and then make that come to life and bring that to life inside of organizations? So economically, it saves a lot of money in regards to time off, efficiency, rehire, healthcare claim. I mean, all of the statistics financially.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's okay. I'd rather talk about return on people than a return on investment. Because if you love the people, the rest will happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much, obviously, emotion, but so much hidden costs in the organization because of those issues not getting the light of day and getting addressed, right? You talked about it just with attrition, retention, issues happening in the workplace, beyond just the human aspect of loving thy neighbor in this process too.
Well, and you said this too. I mean, because even the good book says to love your neighbor as yourself. The problem is if we don't love ourselves, then humanity doesn't have a shot. And that's the self-discovery phase of self-awareness, is we have to begin to be able to have a relationship with us before we can have any relationship with other people. And I see that in a lot of CEOs and a lot of leaders, is they put on this armor that looks stoic and it looks like they're full of courage and they're brave. And actually, they're like Humpty Dumpty sitting on a wall, man. It only takes one little shove, and then the whole world just crumbles.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah. that imposter syndrome out there. I'm
Mhm.
curious that for you, especially being early on and testing this app, finding the right business leaders to work with might be a challenge, or obviously is key, right? Because not all business owners probably have the mindset aligned with what you're doing just yet, unfortunately. So how do you find those right leaders to partner with, and what do you look for?
Yeah, it's interesting because, when we worked for an organization and we had a product that people were buying and we were successful, and then you start up something that nobody's buying and you're curious, is anyone going to buy it? There's two paths you can take. Well, actually, there's multiple paths, but one path is I'm going to go build this in a cave, and when I'm done, I'll bring it out to the world. I think that's pretty immature, and likelihood of success is dismal. So I've done a lot. I mean, I've probably talked to 30, 40 people, leaders that I trust, and ask for feedback. Do you think this will work? If it worked, how would it work? What would it look like inside your organization? And I've got, probably 4 meetings this week, and I'll just keep talking to people until they tell me stop calling me.
But- so if a business leader is listening to this, how might know, hey, I should reach out to Scott. Maybe this is something I need to go deeper on with my team and myself, obviously.
Yeah. I think, obviously I've got an email at psmcgohan@outlook.com. You can call me, you can reach me there. My book email is, Scott McGohan, doc at, the website for the book is scottmcgohan.com. You can reach out that way. And, I think there's a lot of organizations, even in Dayton, that are really helpful. The hub downtown, the arcade, so the business hub, they have a lot of resources for entrepreneurs and startups. They've been incredibly nice and useful. And then, I'm using a branding company in Cincinnati called Hyperquake. They're rock stars. They're incredible. The folks at Aileron have been really helpful and useful. And don't be afraid to just talk to as many people as you can.
So as you look forward now, what's the biggest challenge you see ahead of you? And what are you doing to overcome that?
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, I'm a Pollyanna, man. I ride a unicorn every day, um, and it's probably focus, right? So I've probably got 10, or I'd say 10 balloons up in the air, right? And those are 10 different strategies, where one has to work for sure, but the other 8 or 9 are pretty. I would say I'd call them pretty sexy strategies, but I can get drunk on maybe what I shouldn't do because it's what I want to do.
Oh yeah.
And what I want to make sure is I stay sober in what I have to do. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And because I can get distracted really, really easily. And I've done a pretty good job of saying, hey, I can talk about these highfalutin ideas off to the side, but hey, this one model that this was built for has to work. This is the rail it's on. And these other 5 or 6 or 7 might take off, but let's just make sure one of them is on rails.
And then how do you think about your team, right? Now, you said you're solo, but you've got other folks who are helping you out too as well. And you mentioned being that somebody who you'll identify 10 strategies, right? And it makes a to stay sober on the one on the one or two. So how does your team help you do that? And how do you make sure you have a team to help you do that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wish I could go back in time even a year. I think one of our biggest faults, and this is probably in any relationship, is the fact that we don't set clear expectations. So we get into a meeting and we leave, and I don't know about you, but every meeting I ever left was great. That was a great meeting. That was a great meeting. That was a great meeting. Every prospect I thought I sold, every person I met was going to buy. I mean, for my entire career. Um, and then when it doesn't happen, the expectations kick in. It wasn't me, it was probably them or all those things. So if I could go back 12 months, it was like, hey, what's the outcome that I would want 12 months from now? And what questions and what things do I need to say in order to get there? So people would go off and they would start building what I thought was one thing, and they came back with another. And it wasn't their fault. You know whose fault it was? It was my fault. I wasn't clear. I was not clear. So I can't hold them accountable for that. I have to hold myself accountable for that.
So what type of team support do you have currently in this launch? You talked about a couple of the third parties that you've reached out to, but do you have any other
Yep.
kind of members of the team at this point?
Yeah, right now I've got my son. So he's a filmmaker. And he's been a
Cool.
filmmaker for, gosh, the last 10 years. So he does films for companies, all over the country, and even some, globally. And so I'm a big believer in storytelling, and I think this is how we're going to bring it to life. So now he's on board full time, building video content for One Morning to push that out.
And then how are you leveraging social media and those type of channels, or how do you plan to if you're not yet to get the word out? Especially
Yeah,
get
kind of
it
the
kind of
same.
your target group, right?
Yep, kind of the same thing. So we get the content built. I mean, obviously we've identified the name of the organization, and the whole name is the fact, manifests itself, and millions of people go to bed, and they wake up every morning, and One Morning's hope is their first feeling would be hope. I mean, my life almost ended because I got up one morning and I had no hope. And that's what we hope One Morning can do. So it would be not only video content, but even the messaging behind it. So let's drop the clinical language. Like, for example, if on One Morning, if someone's curious around like alcoholism, somebody that might think they're an alcoholic is probably not going to Google alcoholism, right? They're just not. But maybe they would watch a video for less than a minute that said a question around, why do I embarrass myself when I drink? Right. So that's different. I've done that before. Maybe that drives curiosity. So they're gentle, they're really, or even Alzheimer's and dementia. And like my dad doesn't know my name anymore. Like, how do people deal with that?
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal. And people need help in that. They need help to understand how to process that. Otherwise, they stuff it. And then you know where it comes out? It comes out with your 10-year-old son that you rip him a new one. He's like, where did that come from, Dad?
Yeah.
And that's so unfair.
Yeah.
Or we take it out on our employees.
Yeah. And then you end up feeling even worse about yourself than
Right.
you did going into it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious,
100%.
so for these videos, then in terms of, you talked about authentic storytelling. So then do you have individuals who are actually they're sharing, I assume, their
Yeah.
true story?
And it'll be all Dayton based. I mean, one of the things in starting the company is that, hey, we'll take this nationally. I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want it nationally. I want it Dayton, Ohio. So if someone like Todd is sitting there and he's watching a video that Scott, he's like, I know Scott. And it's like, holy cow, that guy's willing to be vulnerable. Maybe I am too. So it'll be all Dayton based. All the resources, all the videos, all the content will all be about our region.
So how else
Then
do you
hopefully if it takes off, then we'd go to Cincinnati, Columbus, or different markets. So we'll see.
Okay, but the vision though is even in those markets, you would have leaders from those markets,
100%.
right? To make
Yep.
it authentic, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes it ring at home, right? We tend to listen to folks who are in our own local tribe, all right? So,
Right.
so how do you plan on spreading the word then in the Dayton market? What tools are you using? What types of?
We're starting to build that right now. So it's really down from, 2 employees all the way up to, 30, 40,000 employees. I mean, we are not constricted by size. And then we're starting to build, hey, what would that look like? By market, by industry, by size. And then how we bring life to that. And obviously social media. I love social media. A lot of people don't like social media. I think social media can do amazing things. Like I love ice cream. Ice cream can do great things. Ice cream also can do bad things. I mean,
Don't you hate that?
100%. Yeah. Um, and all that stuff. So we're starting to build those marketing plans right now, and what that's going to look like, what success is going to look like after 12 months, and all those things.
Okay. Yes, I'm curious. How will you measure success? Say it's a year from now, or maybe 3 years from now.
And to be honest with you, when my life fell apart, when my ego became like so gigantic that I just wanted to protect my ego. And then my faith's really important to me. So really asking God is, hey, where can I be most useful on this planet? Like right now, where can Scott be most useful? And then um, I can go see addiction downtown Dayton. I can go, or I can go to a homeless shelter and I can see poverty and I can see mental health. And that becomes pretty obvious to me. But where it's not obvious is in Centerville, is in Oakwood, is in Kettering.
Mhm.
There's homes that look fantastic on the outside, but they're full of people that are broken on the inside. And those are the people I'm after. Quite frankly, they're the hardest people to get to. And I think it's why Jesus spent a lot of time, right? With, when you sit there and you talk about the tax collectors, and because you know what, when you're at the bottom, one thing you do have is you have the ability to listen. And humility does amazing things. And I just want to reach the lonely, tired, broken, and afraid. I grew up in Centerville. I call it Self Centerville, which is right next to Ego Wood. And I could say that because I think society too, I think, and sometimes in suburbia, maybe people don't think those things happen, but they happen everywhere.
Everywhere.
So let's just bring light to it.
Outstanding. So, what do you view your keys to success?
I don't have an unlimited budget. I think probably in 24 months, what I love is that the cash flow becomes neutral, right? That it's sustaining, that it's going to cover some expenses. I can see the impact. I was at a company today and I listened to the stories of 10 people. I mean, I can see the stories, they're coming true. And so the financial payback isn't as important as the emotional payback. But still, if I don't work on this, on like being a viable organization, it won't be sustainable and it won't be repeatable. So that's important. Is how do you build that model?
I'm curious. I mean, you, you somebody seems like a passionate learner. So who do you follow? Podcasts or books that you read or thought leaders that help you?
And that's a really, really, really good question. Wow. Man, recently I've just been, um, I follow a lot of people on Instagram because I love the short stories. I love the short stories. And then I follow a lot of people that have really kind of experienced a lot of sobriety in their life. So what I hear the brokenness of where they were and the beauty in regards to where they are. And man, there's so much truth in that. There's so much truth in that. So I can't remember the last actual book that I've read. I wish I was trying to remember the last book I've read. I'm not sure I can remember which one it was.
I'm curious. Hey, we have a lot of I have a spectrum of business owners and leaders who are listening to this podcast, but quite a few of them tend to be a little bit newer in their business owner journey. Now, you've launched a newer business, but you bring with it this 35 years of leadership experience as well. So, what advice would you give to that business owner who's new in their journey? Maybe the first year or so, trying to figure things out.
Yeah, just man, I tell you, know yourself better than anybody in the room. Just um, you know, I 25 years ago, my assistant came in my office and said, "You have values painted on the wall. I have my own set of values. You torque them every day. Today's my last day."
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, And I was more worried about what people would think about her leaving, right? Think about me with her leaving than physically her leaving, which is really arrogant.
Yeah.
So the next day I went back and told her, hey, if I found a coach, so you talk about what your business is in, if you found a coach, if I found a coach and I gave you access to that coach, would you give me a shot? Now, back then, all I was trying to do was get my rear end out of trouble, right? So I'd like to say that my reason for finding a coach was super virtuous, and I don't think it was as virtuous as it sounds, but it did work. So what happened, that coach did, and we had to ask each other 3 questions every day. Am I okay? Are you okay? Are we okay? And then I got a coach. His name's Pete Kunk. He was out of Columbus, Ohio, and he unpacked my life from, when I was an 8-year-old boy in a treehouse to where I was, and kind of helped me understand. As a leader, I was just, I was just broken. I was great at sales. It doesn't really matter how good you are at something if you're terrible at 5 or 6 or other things. And that just gave me the gift of self-awareness. And so just get a truth teller around you, someone that honestly will tell you the truth. And then she retired 25 years later from McGohan Brabender, which was awesome.
Okay. You were
Yeah,
only able to keep her for another 25. Is that
100%. Yep, for
okay?
another 25. That was it. Yep, yep.
Well, Scott, as we wrapping up here today, and you already mentioned this a little bit briefly, but maybe remind folks what are the best ways for folks to stay connected with you, to follow you, and to stay connected with One Morning.
Yeah, so I play a lot on LinkedIn, and a lot on Instagram, and Facebook and all those channels. The nice thing about Scott McGohan with an H is there aren't many McGohans with an H, so you can find me there. You can find psmcgohan at outlook.com, or you can go to scottmcgohan.com, which is the author page with my book, and reach out, and love to hear from folks.
All right. So our final question as we wrap up here: what are you inspired by today, Scott?
When I was at this company today that was doing the beta, I only had 15 minutes per person, but I was asking them, how can I help you? And what I was inspired by was the authenticity of people, and how fast when when we get really humble around other people, and we shrink, we don't get big and tall, we shrink, and we lead with empathy and humility. Um, Beautiful things are just available right in front of us, right in front of us. We don't have to go looking for it. It's available. So I was inspired by their own humility and their own vulnerability today.
All right. Well, that is a snapshot of you as well. So thank you for sharing your vulnerability, being so open and sharing your story. Right, that opens the door for people, and so I'm sure for folks listening to this video today as well, encourages them to take that step forward, to be authentic, to share their story, to tear down that mask that we all carry around,
Oh
of
yeah.
who we're trying to project out there. And it not only, especially those in leadership positions, and we all are leaders in some way, shape, or form, right? It really can help us connect more deeply with those around us. So we're all better for it. So, Scott, thank you for sharing your story. To our listeners, we're thrilled to have you here with us today. Again, encourage you to go check out his book, Culture is an Inside Job. Also, follow him and One Morning for the great things they're doing here in the Dayton region. So, thank you all. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And hope you all have a terrific day.